Welcome to Contemporary Retirement. Contemporary Retirement is a public interest program focused on the retirement community. Every program has segments on legal, financial, and health issues affecting the retirement community. Contemporary Retirement is sponsored in part by a major grant from the Family Heritage Trust Company.
Contemporary Retirement is sponsored by Family Heritage Trust Company. The Family Heritage Trust Company is an independent bank chartered trust company established by local professionals to provide fiduciary services, including fee-based investment advice, trust services, retirement planning, and tax planning. The Family Heritage Trust Company is committed to client service in our communities. For more information, call the Family Heritage Trust Company at 301-631-5900.
Contemporary Retirement is sponsored in part by a grant from R. Thomas Murphy & Associates, P.C. R. Thomas Murphy & Associates is one of Franklin County's leading law firms, emphasizing estate, trust, elder law, and medical assistance planning.
Welcome to the Is It Legal feature on Contemporary Retirement. Is It Legal focuses on the legal issues affecting the retirement community. With me today is Tom Murphy from the R. Thomas Murphy Law Firm with offices in Waynesboro, Chambersburg, and McConnellsburg. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Good morning, Mike.
Tom, we had a little chat last week about law firms' $10,000 best friend for life stuff.
Oh, great. It sounds good, but it doesn't really, in my mind, protect the consumer because you can always find services. You don't need to throw money at people to do that.
Yeah, we want to talk to people. We want to talk to them and charge them for the value of what we've actually brought. So if somebody's coming in, they're concerned about something that might happen 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to do consultation fees, make sure their powers of attorney are right, wills and healthcare directives, and that's it. And it's going to be hourly billed plus relatively straightforward, inexpensive document preparation charges, nowhere close to the kind of money that these best friends for life people want.
Yeah, it just seems like it's backwards, and it doesn't deal with the reality of most folks need incremental information and pay for it as you go because there'll always be those services. There's no need to do that.
And we're always very concerned about how would they be able to deliver the service if the provider who took that check is not able to do so.
Yeah, anybody can drop dead, and then what happens then?
Right.
What provisions are there?
And then, of course, we have the same problem with, the restaurants and the hotel meetings in which people are being sold trusts. The trust is the perfect answer to everything.
Right, and they're sold for a variety of reasons. Avoiding probate, they'll save you taxes, they'll protect things from nursing homes, which are absolutely false.
Yeah, one of the challenges is that you look at these trusts, they're being sold as protect the assets, but in reality, in Maryland, and I'm sure similar to Pennsylvania, the fact is if you're the settlor of that trust, you created it, there is no asset protection.
Right, and then, if you want to get into the more sophisticated, irrevocable type things, that's one thing, but they have their own problems and risks and issues. And I was reading, a scholarly article about states taking the position that they're going to start to attack these. So there isn't any silver bullet out there.
Well, and the big problem with these trusts is that oftentimes the estate planning business for lawyers is essentially a ship that's sailing. When you start looking at a husband and wife being able to protect $11 million, the proposed new rules may be substantially more than that. The reality is that most folks do not have an estate tax issue. Pennsylvania, Maryland, to whatever extent that there were taxes due, they get it, whether it's in a trust or through probate anyway.
Yeah, and that's why when someone's telling you that it's going to save you taxes, they are shading or absolutely avoiding the truth because Pennsylvania and Maryland are very good at looking through these devices.
And so the problem is for married couples, the law is designed to protect married couples, but the government is paranoid about trusts. So if you put money in a trust, in Maryland, you've taken assets which could have been protected, and they are now not protected because they're in a trust.
Right, and that's usually my single most important reason in not going to a trust initially, because if we have a nursing home admission, we've got to empty the trust out and do away with it.
And one of the ironies is we as lawyers, we make more money by writing trusts than we make by writing wills. So
Certainly.
when we're sitting here telling people you don't need a trust because it isn't going to help from your probate point of view, all it's going to do is take a middle class family and put them at risk for long-term care bills, which they would not have been at risk for but for the trust. It's not helpful.
No, exactly, and that's a good point because the probate process is very straightforward and simple if people aren't fighting, acting like fools. The Medicaid process is much worse and more complicated, so we want to keep everything as simple as we possibly can for as long as we can.
Well, you just said something really important, though. The fact of the matter is, if people want to fight, it doesn't matter whether it's in probate or it's in a trust. And in Maryland, the litigation expenses in a trust are much, much higher than the litigation expenses in probate.
Absolutely. You take a relatively simple process and just turbocharge it with the trust rules because they're much more complex.
And the probate administration in Maryland is very simple, and you can get a court date almost immediately. You can get it resolved quickly, but trust litigation's in the circuit court, and that means years and years and much more expensive.
Yeah, and that's why a will can be, quickly presented to a clerk in Pennsylvania. You don't see a judge, you don't have a court date, you just walk in and away you go. And instead, with a trust, again, you may need a court date in order to resolve issues.
Well, Tom, as always, we're not in the business of saying no trust, but we're in the business of saying let's make sure they make sense.
Right, they're tools, as is everything.
Tom, as always, thanks for taking time to appear on the program.
You're welcome.
More from Contemporary Retirement after these messages.
Few things in life are as important as family. Leave your insurance orders to us. Write Gardner. Call or visit our website to learn how we can make insurance simple and more affordable.
Every life that meets its end leaves a heart for love to mend. Sister, brother, family, friends are left to carry on. When the loss seems more than you can bear, it's nice to know that we'll be there at Double Safe Fiery Funeral Home. We care.
Call Ed Lowe to help put your mind at ease.
Welcome to a special guest feature on Contemporary Retirement. This segment focuses on various issues which are of importance to the retirement community. With me today is Michael Piercy, Director, Washington County Department of Social Services. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Michael.
One of the great challenges, both in your aspect of providing social services to the retirement community and in my role as a lawyer, is there's this perception that you either have to be on food stamps or on welfare before the Department of Social Services has any services available to you.
And that's a misnomer. That's a mistaken belief. Actually, we encourage folks to call in and explore what services are available to them, especially in the area of personal care. We have a lot of folks who are physically disabled or aged who would benefit for some of those care, and we ask them to call our hotline for adult services. Something that always concerns me during the winter months is food security. And I definitely want folks to call in, check to see what they're eligible for. A lot of our folks are on very restricted incomes, and now is not the time to go hungry.
Well, part of what we want people to be aware of is that while you're the director of the Department of Social Services in Washington County, all of the Maryland departments are similar, and we see analogous programs in adjoining states
Absolutely.
as well.
West Virginia, Pennsylvania, all have similar programs.
And so one of the things you have to do is you have to put aside this sense that, I have too many resources or something, because in fact we see people at risk that have a lot of resources.
Absolutely. And Mike, that's something else I wanted to talk about today, because I know you do a great deal of financial advising and looking at financial resources, economic security. What we don't always look at is social security and building social resources for the retired community. Do you have family? Do you have friends? Regrettably, folks find them when they find themselves in their retirement years. They don't have friends. They don't have neighbors who care for them, look in on them. There was a time when churches and Boy Scouts and civic organizations would shovel the walks of the aged. They would look in on them, make sure that they got what they needed. We still have that obligation today as a community. Regrettably, something that I talk to parents about frequently is get your kids out and get them off of the gray ocean of computer games and television. Have them look in on their elderly folks. That's a part of creating a community.
And of course, part of the problem is when you leave that older person isolated, I know when I talk to your people is that, self-neglect ends up being the biggest neglect that you have to deal with. Not somebody physically abusing, but the person not taking care of themselves.
Absolutely, and you see that on those hoarding reality shows all the time, that because they don't have human contact, a surrogate oftentimes is to get another animal. And unfortunately, we're the ones to blame for that as a community. We need to help folks make those connections with their family. If you're a family member, try to ensure that your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle, or your neighbor has those contacts.
And part of what, Maryland in particular, we see people not getting prescription drug plans, not getting their prescriptions, and yet the state of Maryland has said you don't have to be, on welfare to get it. We're in fact supporting middle-class folks to make sure they have a prescription plan.
Absolutely. And there's, yes, contact the Department of Social Services. There's also non-governmental prescription drug programs that can help get you reduced or generic brands at cost practically from the pharmaceutical companies. And so we encourage folks to apply for those.
And then, of course, one of the great problems that we have Holly Place on here, not-for-profit assisted living, but I know that the state of Maryland has adopted a program very similar to what they do for children that are not, being appropriately supported. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's our Project Home, and that's our adult foster care. Rather than have an individual institutionalized, we try to take some of our disabled and aged population and put them in a home environment where they have a caregiver, where they have somebody who can connect with them, socialize with them.
And so much like foster care, that they take over that parenting responsibility,
yes. Yeah.
But it also doesn't then require that a $4,000 or $5,000 a month assisted living, because these foster care, with support from both you and their Social Security check, they have 7x24 support.
Absolutely, and our county commissioners have been very generous in supporting the program. They were in this past week to speak to a care provider. The other thing that's nice about this is that individual, that aged or disabled individual, maintains their independence. So they have a room. They have a person who looks in, and while they prepare meals and may help them with some of their personal hygiene, the person has independence to make purchases, to watch television, to do things that they would not necessarily get, and have those interactions that they would not get in an institutional setting.
Which is absolutely crucial, because right now the way the care delivery system has been designed, we have care delivery for people in hospitals, nursing homes, but
Right.
really nothing in between senior housing and a nursing home.
Right. Right, and there is no replacement for home. Robert Frost wrote about that in his poetry, and that's very moving.
So we would encourage anybody watching this show, if they have a problem, particularly if they see a family member who has neglect issues, or a friend or a relative, contact their local Department of Social Services. You can do it anonymously.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Michael, as always, thanks for taking time to appear on the program.
Thank you, Michael.
More from Contemporary Retirement after these messages.
Tranquility at Fredericktown Assisted Living and Memory Care provides a warm, home-like atmosphere that promotes daily life enrichment. At Tranquility, our medical director is a geriatric physician. Our professionals support and understand the various stages associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. We have on-site physical, occupational, and speech therapists, as well as around-the-clock licensed nurses. For more information, give Tranquility at Fredericktown a call today, because everyone deserves great care. Let us do the caregiving so you and your loved one can embrace life again.
Guys, I thought you were supposed to be working in the yard.
But Dad, just one more bid on HurleyAuctions.com.
If you haven't visited HurleyAuctions.com, you don't know what you're missing. Whether you're buying or selling, antique cars, tractors, boats, or real estate, you can do it all at HurleyAuctions.com.
Get to know Dr. Carrie Hesley at Diagnostic Imaging Services.
What I find most rewarding is caring for women through our Women's Imaging Center. We have a caring staff that will ease patients through an ultrasound, bone densitometry, breast biopsy, or mammogram. Our health team is sensitive to emotions involved in women's imaging and understands that every woman is at risk for breast cancer. Providing the community with a center that is so dedicated to breast health and the imaging needs of women is something special.
DIS Women's Imaging Center, providing women with progressive care.
Welcome to Contemporary Health Scene. Contemporary Health Scene focuses on the health issues affecting the retirement community. With me today is Dr. Robert Mazzei, who is the medical director of the Laser Vein Institute, which is associated with Associated Radiologists. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mazzei.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I also know you're board certified radiologist, but also board certified in vein disease. What's that all about?
Well, just to demonstrate extra level of competence, there's additional training and certification by the American Board of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine, which I've achieved recently.
Okay, now first of all, kind of describe what is vein illness. How does it manifest itself?
Well, the most common manifestation are the veins that you can see bulging in the lower extremities.
All right, so tell us how veins work.
Well, veins are tubes that carry blood back to the heart, and when they go bad, they stretch and the valves stop working properly, and that's when the symptoms begin.
All right, so let's talk a bit. Obviously, you know, if you're standing up, the blood's going downhill. Not too hard to figure out how to get it to go downhill, but obviously somewhere in this process it has to go back to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
How does that valving work?
Well, when everything's working properly, the muscles in the leg and the tissues pump the blood towards the heart, and the valves prevent the blood from going back down the leg. But as we get older, and sometimes for genetic reasons, that pump mechanism fails, and then the veins dilate and become symptomatic.
All right, so what does it look like?
It can look like various things. You can have veins that are just bulging under the skin. That can be the first sign.
So you have smooth skin, but now you got a bulge sticking out.
That's right. And in more advanced disease, you can get swelling of the leg. You can have skin changes. Some people think they have eczema because it does look like an eczema. And in the worst case, the skin can break down and one can develop an ulcer.
All right, let's have Director Greg pull up a couple of pictures here. And so what we see here, so that's what we're talking about right here. So this is a leg that obviously the blood is not flowing back up and it's collecting in the veins.
Right, and there's large bulging varicosities, there's skin changes. This is fairly advanced disease. There's everything on this patient except an ulcer.
All right, and so this is caused by the blood not flowing back up the way it's supposed to.
That's right, and even though symptoms often manifest lower in the leg, the problem typically starts up near the groin where the vein starts.
All right, so now is this that same leg?
That's the same leg about a month later after we closed the vein that wasn't working.
All right, so now you close a vein that's not working. What happens to the blood?
Well, there are many veins in the legs, and the body is an amazing thing, and the blood just reroutes itself into healthy veins. And the bad vein that is treated with the laser just closes.
All right, now in the past, there was a fairly gruesome treatment. What was that called?
Well, vein stripping was the standard for many years before we had technology like small lasers on a catheter, and that typically involved days in the hospital and was generally unpleasant.
And so they actually pulled them out.
They would actually rip them out. That's right. They would
could
hook
not
onto
be
them.
Very comfortable.
No.
Okay, so what happens today?
Well, today it's like having an IV catheter placed in the vein, and on that catheter we have a tiny laser that I advance up the vein to the trouble spot. That typically doesn't hurt. Patients don't feel that when the catheter is moving. And we turn the laser on and slowly pull the laser out. It heats up the vein and causes it to close within a short time.
Now, when it says it doesn't hurt, most of the doctors that tell me it doesn't hurt are speaking as if they studied it in a book, but in your case, it's personal.
Well, one of the reasons one thing that got me interested in vein disease is I had the procedure myself on my left leg probably about 10 years ago. And yeah, it truly doesn't hurt. The most uncomfortable part is just having the numbing medicine. The numbing needles you can feel a little bit like any procedure, but it's very minimal.
All right, so it's not one of these, it doesn't hurt, I read it in a book.
No, yes, I've lived it.
All right, and part of the challenge here is that sometimes people think that this is just a cosmetic treatment, but tell us what really happens if you fail to address these issues.
Well, this is certainly a medical disease, and left untreated, you can get skin breakdown, leg swelling, ulceration, and in severe cases, blood clotting.
As we showed in that picture, that had to be a heck of a lot more comfortable than the second picture a month later.
Yes, it's very satisfying work to do because most patients, like the patient that we showed, feels much better in a very short time and are very happy they've had the procedure.
Do the person have to go through their physician to access the Laser Vein Institute, or can they direct refer?
I get patients, both. Actually, most of my patients are self-referred, but we're happy to work with referring physicians as well.
And because it's a medical treatment, then is it normally covered by insurance?
Yes, you know, depending on most insurance companies do cover these procedures as long as we demonstrate the appropriate abnormality on ultrasound.
Okay, and obviously that's what you do.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Dr. Macy, I want to thank you for taking time to appear on our program.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More from Contemporary Retirement after these messages.
The Community Foundation strives to be a forward-thinking organization.
We are assessing needs, working with donors to see things differently,
so that Frederick County can be its best. It's a wonderful place for all of us to live, work, and play.
We look forward to addressing the future needs of the community.
Visit frederickcountygives.org and learn how you can start to see things differently too.
Albright, Crumbacker, Mal, and Idtel are a full-service firm that provides elder care services, including managing incoming bills, bill payment, depositing checks, balancing bank statements, and preparing, planning, and filing personal tax returns. Put your mind at ease and call us today.
Welcome to the Making Sense feature on Contemporary Retirement. Making Sense focuses on the financial issues affecting the retirement community. With me today, Sandra Miller, Senior Vice President at the Family Heritage Trust Company. Welcome to the show, Sandy.
Thanks for inviting me, Michael.
Sandy, you know, when we deal with the retirement community, there's this sense that we want to be secure, and we certainly respect that. But also, as we've talked about in the past, people need to take into account that inflation is eroding their purchasing power.
That's exactly right. And if you're not in something that's growing, your money actually is losing its buying power. So it's very important to take a look at the investments that you're making.
So when we look at a 2 to 3% inflation rate, and CDs paying 1% or a little bit more, you're actually losing between 1 and 2% of your purchasing power every year by the failure to be appropriately invested.
That's exactly right. And a lot of people don't understand that there's risk in the investments that they're in, and that is the buying power risk.
And so, and when you look at the rule of 72 that we've talked about in the past, that with a 3% inflation rate, it means the cost of living will double in 24 years. And if you have an investment that is not growing, you've lost a significant portion of your purchasing power.
That's exactly right. And you won't be able to live the lifestyle that you thought you could live.
And more importantly, the Office of Management and Budget has said that the cost of care and long-term care, which is the last risk that most people actually have in their lives, colleges are paid for, houses are paid for, is long-term care risk has doubled the inflation rate the last 20 years, and the prediction is it will double the inflation rate the next 20 years. So not 3% on inflation, but 6% means the cost of care could double in 12 years. And to be making 1% means that you're actually setting yourself up to have substantial losses if you have care needs.
That's exactly right. And really, those care needs are the only thing that people are worrying about, as you point out. And they don't understand the concept of the loss of buying power of those dollars unless they are appropriately invested.
Well, if they were to go into the grocery store and proffer to the grocery store the same amount of money they paid for a loaf of bread 25 years ago, are they likely to walk out of the store with a loaf of bread?
They might get a slice or two.
So, these are real. People need to pay attention to this stuff. And yet it does not mean you have to accept the full risk of the market. Part of the role of the trust company, you're a fiduciary, you can help a client measure the acceptable risk for them to be involved in the market.
Yes, as a fiduciary, as you mentioned, we are bound by law to act in the best interest of the client. So we have to point out what we need to provide them and give them the choice. Now, one of the things is you put some of the money that you have to invest in some conservative, fully diversified stock portfolio, and you can put the other portion in a short-term government bond with a balance and really make a lot more than the 3% or 6% inflation rate that you're fighting against.
And so what we oftentimes challenge people with is that if you're dealing with a 30-year-old preparing for retirement, they should accept the full risk of the market because they need that to grow to the maximum level. And what the market does in any 3 or 4 year window really doesn't matter because they're not supposed to touch it for 35 years. On the other hand, when you're dealing with a 70-year-old retiree, they don't have to accept the full risk of the market in order to try to match up at least against inflation.
Yes, that's correct. And they also should bear in mind that they're going to be taking some money out a little at a time, but the bulk of their money will still be participating in that market. So on a day-to-day basis, the market can go up or down, and you are still going to have a base from which you can withdraw and pay those nursing home bills.
You know, we have people every day sitting back and say, well, I have CDs, they're guaranteed. And there are a number of highly recognized national pundits that have said, guaranteed to lose because of the loss of purchasing power.
That's exactly right. In today's world, you really can't count on your CD interest income to provide you the lifestyle that you really need.
And so oftentimes, though, as the people say, well, how can I be sure I'm going to participate with the market? My past experience has been as I put money in, the market goes up, but I never seem to make any money.
Well, the portfolio you put your money in might have something to do with it. And with the Family Heritage...
Or the fees and commissions.
Well, and the fees and the commissions as well.
Right.
But with the Family Heritage Trust Company, the portfolios that we have are fully diverse, both globally and sector-wise, size of companies and so on and so forth. So if there's a piece of the market going down, you have many other pieces in our portfolios that can mitigate that loss.
And so if you're looking at a very conservative portfolio, it might only be 20% equity, 80% fixed income. To that 30-year-old trying to grow for retirement might be 100% equity.
That's exactly right. So you have to balance where you are in your life cycle and in your investment challenges.
Sandy, as always, thanks for taking time to appear on the program.
My pleasure, Michael.
Thank you from Contemporary Retirement.
Remember a more carefree time? Leave your insurance worries to us, Wright Gardner. Call or visit our website to learn how we can make insurance simple and more affordable.
These days, it seems like everything's online, and filling out claim forms and receiving and paying bills online isn't always easiest. That's why we at Quality First Insurance encourage you to just give us a call. Let us help.
Hi there, I'm Paul Sweeney with Quality First Insurance, and it's still just as simple. Our offices are open every weekday where you'll be able to call and speak to real, live people.
No detail was missed. I'm so glad that I turned to Quality First Insurance.
I've recommended Quality First Insurance to my friends who've been just as satisfied.
If you're not happy with what you're paying for Medigap, or more importantly, not happy with your service, give us a try. We're locally owned, and we take the time to provide you with the best. We are Quality First Insurance, and our mission is to provide quality products to quality people. Pick up the phone and give us a call today at 800-745-1411.